Welcome back, everyone. First of all, I want to thank everyone again. I want to thank our family plays games, Mick and Starla, for joining us today and for sharing this message. It is such an important topic to discuss. We've discussed some of these things in the past here on this channel, particularly from a publisher point of view. We will keep talking about it. I was just talking to, if you're watching this after the fact, I was talking to T in the chat, and they said that they have been working on this as well for many years, and it's a slow process. Change is very, very slow. You would think that having a more diverse hobby and having a hobby that is inviting and that where everyone feels like they can just come and be themselves and enjoy the hobby, to be invited, and not just to be invited, like Mick and Starla said as well, just for who they are or what they represent, but to actually have a voice at the table. The fact that we are still struggling with this, and this is a very real struggle still in the industry, not just here in the hobby gaming industry, but it's in all areas of life, and we will keep working on it. We will keep talking about it. We will keep pushing for change. And I think that it's this is, thank you T, by the way. Enjoy your stream as well, and thank you for stopping by here. I think this is a topic that oftentimes it falls on minorities to try to scream at the top of their lungs to fight for change, when it really should fall on all of us to invite people to come, to share their experiences, to share their stories, to be part of this hobby. I love doing. First of all, I've watched this presentation, or what you want to call it, by Mick and Starla. I've watched it several times, and every time I'm blown away. And I've talked to several people about this as well. I'm blown away by the patience of repeating the same message that seemingly falls on deaf ears, and talking about things that should be obvious, that we should want to have an environment that fosters and celebrates diversity, things that celebrate the things that make us different. And instead, it's become something that diversity is oftentimes not wanted for some reason. And the patience on those that have been fighting for this for a long time, that keep doing it. What we don't want to happen is that people feel like nothing is happening and that they should give up, because that's not what we want. We want change to happen. We want there to be progress. We want there to be a real and substantial change, not just on the surface, but in the core of how we act and react and things. And I was just thinking about the things that they were talking about, how when we're looking at other areas of life, right? We love the diversity. We love the different types of music, and we love different types of cuisine or entertainment, whatever it might be. We like the diversity in clothing, being able to choose your style and hairstyles and whatever it is. We all want that freedom to express ourselves, of being who we are, of liking what we like, loving who we love, having our own preferences and having our own likes and dislikes. In all facets of life, that's something that we all value. And yet, in this hobby, we are denying people that same freedom because of, not outright. I don't think there are, I mean, I know that there are people who are deliberately being, there are people that are deliberately alienating others for whatever reason that might be, often because of gender and race and sexual identity and so forth. But on the whole, most people are good. I don't think if you were to ask a lot of people, do you want, would you invite someone to sit at the table? Most people, of course, they would. Most people, we in general, this is not to say that most people in the hobby are racist or sexist or whatever it might be, but the tendency for us as a whole to be very protective of something that is not really something that we need to protect something where we feel threatened by other people coming into the hobby, when it's the opposite. There's no threat here to our hobby and our enjoyments going away. We want more women. We want more people of color. We want more people of different ages. We want people of different ethnicities. We want people of different sexual orientations. We want that variety in our hobby. Not because that's going to threaten us, who we are and what we do. That's not what this is about. It's about having a space where people can feel safe, where we can peacefully coexist, and where we can celebrate what brings us together, which is gaming. I've thought many times on simpler aspects of this, right? I've thought about representation in artwork, for example, in games. And I know this has been talked about many times. Again, change is slow. We need to keep talking about it. But I've been thinking about, I look at my own family. So I have 5 children, and to varying degrees, they enjoy games as well. And to varying degrees, my daughters care or don't care about the representation in games. Some of them really care. They don't want to play a character unless it's female. And not just that, a lot of games have that token female in the to choose from. There are 5-6 male characters, 1 female character. My daughters want choice. They want to have variety, not because it matters for the enjoyment of the rest of the game, but it matters to them for whatever reason. It's not about the game mechanisms being different. It's not about that. It's about them feeling that they can identify themselves with this individual, and finding that they have a character who represents them. That doesn't mean that it's always an ideal, but at least they had a choice. That doesn't mean that it will exactly reflect them, but having more than one to choose from, particularly if I'm playing with a game with multiple of them, to have the ability to choose and say, well, I would like to be this one. I would like to be this character. Those things seem so obvious. It's similar to player colors in games. I don't mean to take this lightly, but if someone is saying, well, I don't understand what the big deal is, think about player colors in games. You want the freedom to choose your player color. You want options. Sometimes people lament, oh, well, there's no yellow in here because I like playing yellow. There's no green. I'm always green. you want the freedom to choose your player color. And at the same time, people question that why someone would want the freedom to choose the character that represents them in the game. It blows my mind that such simple such simple things are an issue. I don't get it. Anyway, one thing that I want to do is I want to spend this. Hello, by the way, Deadpan. Welcome. I want to spend this part 2, not because I think that I can say things any better than Mick and Starla just did, or because I think that I don't have anything to add to the conversation as a person of in any minority. I'm a very I don't belong to any minority, so I'm not speaking from that perspective at all. But I want to have this conversation because we need to talk about these things. These are topics that we need to talk about. We need to talk about diversity and inclusion in the hobby as a whole of people at the table. But we also need to talk about it from a publisher point of view, because as publishers, we have the power of affecting change by the decisions that we make. Whenever something gets brought up on BGG to talk about, for example, what we were talking about, female representation in games, or if it's representation of people of color, whatever it might be. Sometimes someone will post a thread on BGG asking an honest question and saying, was there a reason why there were only 2 women out of 10? Or is there a reason why there are no people of color? Is there a reason why, whatever it is, right? An honest question. And for some reason, people feel the need to jump in and say, well, what are you trying to push here? What agenda do you have? As if it's as if there's a threat to the enjoyment of games to other people. And that's not what it's about. This is about asking honest questions, and about, if anything, the agenda is making sure everyone feels welcome, making sure everyone feels represented. Because we've also had times, there have been a couple of games that had only women in the artwork. And then you had typically white men that would post on BGG saying, oh, is there a reason why there were only women here? That doesn't seem very diverse. You know what? There are so many men depicted in all the other games that this barely makes a difference. One game that chose to have an all-female cast, that does not tip the scales. And I'm amazed, not in a good way, that these topics and questions keep popping up, because all we want is for everyone to be able to sit down at the table, no matter who they are, young, old, white, of color, whatever it is, to be able to sit down, enjoy the game, and that we can enjoy playing together. That's what we want. That's what everyone wants. And then we have these issues that crop up that create barriers that didn't need to be there. So in any case, if you have comments and questions and stuff, please put them in here. If you have questions because like I said earlier, the Mick and Starla, this was a recording from them. We were not able to sync up our schedules and so forth. If you have questions for them as well, please put them in the chat. I'll pass it on. I want to do some kind of additional discussion on these topics. For that matter, we want to keep talking about it. We've talked about it in the past, but we're going to keep talking about it because from our point of view as a publisher, even though none of us within our company belong to a minority, the only thing that we have is we have a difference in men and women within our company, but otherwise none of us are belong to a minority. But we want to do our part in using our voice to talk about these things and to push for change and to lend our voice to help bring these topics to the forefront. So if you want to participate with questions and so forth, then please do so. Obviously, I ask that this is treated with the respect that it needs. This is an important topic, and from our point of view, we know firmly where we stand. We know what our policies are on this. We know where what our views are on this, and we are firm on those. And we do not tolerate, whether it be in chat or elsewhere, we do not tolerate views that are contrary to our to what we stand for as a publisher and as individuals within Board&Dice. There are plenty of other places for people to discuss views that are contrary to that, but not here. And also, I want to say thank you, by the way, Deadpan, for the appreciation. I want to make it clear, none of these things that we are doing, we're not doing this, having this conversation, dedicating part of our streaming schedule to this topic or talking about it in any way for us as a publisher to receive praise. That is not what this is about. This is about using our voice and our platform for important topics. That's what this is about. We're not doing things so that people will look and say, "Oh, look at what Board&Dice is doing." We're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and we're going to keep doing it because it's the right thing to do. It does not matter to us whether we receive any kind of praise for it or anything. That's never the goal with this. The goal is to do our part in affecting change and to bring additional light on these issues that for some reason we are struggling with today. So that said, I want to talk a little bit about what can we as a publisher do. What are some of the basic things that every publisher should be doing and can be doing to make a bit of a difference? Even though change is slow, there are things that we can do that will help progress things. Okay, and one of the very basic things is to establish within your company a code of conduct. Establish the code of conduct needs to cover things that make it clear where you stand on these issues. So that if something happens, not that we want it to, but if something happens, let's say at a convention, there's something that happens at a booth, there are off remarks that are made, jokes or things that are said that may not have been intended. Okay, I'm not saying that there's always intention to harm and hurt, but they still happen. But having something in place so that at least you as a publisher, your employees, and the people that are volunteers, that they are aware of the type of conduct that is expected and what's tolerated and what's not. You can find the Board&Dice Code of Conduct on our website. This is something that we share with every new employee. We share this with every volunteer that will be at a convention. We share this with designers that we work with, anyone who will be part of our booth at a convention. We do diversity and inclusion training for new employees. We talk about representation in games. We talk about cultural respect. We do all these things with every new employee, and we also have these trainings for our volunteers. And why do we do this? So that if there is any kind of issue that pops up at a convention, for example, no matter if this is hopefully not one of our team members or a volunteer, but no matter if it is someone on our team or someone who's just visiting the booth, we have a clear policy of what we will do, what actions will we take, how will we react, and what are the consequences for this. And this is clearly spelled out. There's no, and none of these are, not that I should have to say this, but I will anyway, because sometimes people are like, oh, well, you don't have to be so sensitive. Yes, I do. Or we do, I should say. We absolutely have to be sensitive, because you cannot tolerate the type of actions and language that have the possibility of hurting someone's feelings, particularly in what should be a safe place where people should be able to come together. The definition of a convention, for example, is that you have strangers that are agreeing to these social terms of gathering together in one place for the purpose of what brings them together, which is gaming. You cannot have things that are apart from that. It's one thing if people have a disagreement about take that move that someone made. That's fine, because that's part of the social contract of meeting together in gaming. People agreed to play this game. But you cannot have other influences affect the things that bring people together, because the moment that we let other things, personal preferences, insensitive remarks, whatever it is, when we allow those things to drive a wedge between us so that people cannot enjoy games, that's a problem. And we have in our code of conduct, we have spelled out basically this is what we tolerate, this is what we don't tolerate, what do we mean by this, and what are the actions that we take if and we're willing to stand by those things as well. And we have in the past. We don't always talk openly about whenever those things happen, because that's not what it's about. It's about the fact that we have something in place that defines who we are, what we believe in, and we're willing to stand by it 100%. So that's one thing. That's an easy first step to do, is to establish a code of conduct. If you can't do that, then that means that there are questionable motives that would somehow hinder this. So establishing a code of conduct for yourself, for the team, for the people that you work with, along with actionable items in there that say, well, what happens if someone is guilty of sexual harassment or racist remarks, or whether it be intended or not. What happens? The next thing is to look at obviously the games that we publish. Let's start with the most simple one, which is rulebooks. One thing that is very, very simple, and this is not catering to anything. So if someone for whatever reason is anti whatever we're talking about here, so far having a code of conduct, that's just good practice in general. It's good protection for yourself, and that should be something that people want to do regardless of their views on this. Same thing what I'm about to talk about when it comes to rule books. We always use a generic collective term in the setup. We talk about the players. Give one of each resource to each player. Give each player whatever it is. So in setup and stuff, we talk about the players. We typically talk about the players collectively, or each player, or some similar language that we use when we talk about scoring or other things, right? Because that means that we're talking about the people, no matter how many there are and so forth, and it makes it an easy generic term that does not hinder whatever else we have to. Then when we actually talk about the rules, we always direct it towards the reader, so we always use you in there. When we describe an action, we say, you can do this. When you do this, this can happen. And then if it's something that then affects other players, then we say, the other players, or the player to your left, whatever it might be. And some people, for some reason, they will say, well, why do you cater to people that want more gender neutral language? First of all, it's not. First of all, I don't understand. If I'm going to be completely honest, I don't understand that line of thinking in the first place. Second of all, it's not about catering to some weird request or unreasonable demands by people. It's about people being able to read a rulebook without any hindrance. I know that in the past it was common, not just in rulebooks, it was common in general to pick a gender, most oftenly a male, from a male perspective, and using he in the rulebook, or sometimes he or she. But language is so rich that you can use a neutral language that actually makes the rulebook easier to read. When you talk about the players and you use you to direct what you're writing towards the player, it makes the rulebook more inviting to read. It means that the player feels involved. It means that, oh, hey, they feel like it's written to them. You can use a more personal language. And all of these things are positive, regardless of what you think about the whole male, female, gender neutral stuff. These are simple things. This is something that is not, it's not complicated. And in fact, it's a positive change in general. Just use a neutral language. That means that you're not making assumptions about who the reader is, and you're not making any assumptions about anything. You're directing it towards the individual, not some imaginary group of people or some you're directing it towards the individual. And whenever you can write something or direct something towards the individual, same thing here. I am imagining that I'm talking to you directly as an individual, even though this may be viewed by people that I don't know or that will never comment or whatever, but I'm still talking to you as a person, because that makes it nicer. It makes it nicer to listen. It means that the way I speak will change as well. Dutch Yoda in the chat said that I'm so annoyed with reading he in the rulebook. And again, first of all, I agree. Again, this is one of those things where I know that in some parts it's a holdover from previous times, but this change to switching to gender neutral language has been a positive change that has been going on for a long time, and it's not fueled by, like, when people bring this up, it's not, again, there's no threat to the enjoyment of games and stuff. It's just a matter of pointing out, saying, oh, look, you should change this. And then just change it, and everything will be fine. Just change that in the next rule book that you make. This is not about standing, like, if people say, well, I don't want to change them, why? What are you standing for? There are no pros and cons, or sorry, there are no pros to keeping he in the rulebook. Now, what I want to say though is that the agenda, if you want to call it that way, the goal with this change and the reason why it deserves to be brought up, and the reason why every time that a publisher fails to do this, every time that a publisher does not have a code of conduct, every time that a publisher does not use neutral language, it should be mentioned so that it can be changed, not because, again, there's a threat to someone's enjoyment of games or so, but because we want the hobby to be more diverse and inclusive. And this applies, there are benefits to this whether or not you agree with what we're talking about. There are no benefits to fighting against it. So that was the second thing with rulebooks. Then we look at artwork. We've had a few conversations. I was talking to Joel Holtzman, who did artwork for Dark Ages for us. And one thing that I really appreciate in that game, now unfortunately because it's based on historical figures, and typically, especially at that time, a lot of them were the people in power were men. So because it has to represent some of the rulers and such. But aside from that, aside from the gender diversity or lack thereof, which is because of historical people in there, there were the people that were drawn were depicted different ages, different hairstyle, different clothing styles and such to give them personality. In other games, one of the things that we've been working on for a long time, both when it comes to the artwork and the games that we publish, as well as if you were to look at our team, we're not perfect. We don't have yet a perfectly diverse team. If you look at, for example, the gender split between us, so there are 12 of us. We have 5 women. It could be better, but we are also deliberately seeking out to hire more women, and by that I should actually say to not hire men in every position, right? We want that diversity. Now, other diversity when it comes to race and so forth is we're certainly inviting other people that we would like to have a more racially diverse team as well. Unfortunately, because of where our headquarters are located and because of the need for certain things to happen in person, that means that there are less opportunities for this. Of course, we're looking for ways to broaden that and to, especially with the pandemic, it has also opened our eyes to other possibilities of distance work, for example. Are there ways that we can accomplish this? But to go back to what I was talking about, so in the artwork of the games, have diversity. Obviously, if a game is set in a very specific setting that requires it to be not diverse, okay, if it's historically based or whatever, but aside from that, there's no reason to not have a mix of people. And it doesn't have to be a 50-50 split. It can be a 40-60. It can be a 0 to 100 in favor of non-white men, right? Have a mix of ages, have a mix of races, have a mix of people in general. Why? Because why not? Why not have something, and again, just as a simple thing to go back to when I'm playing games with my own children. They want that diversity. They want to feel represented in the games. And again, like I said, we are not even in our family in any way a minority. Yet it's important for them. How much more important is it then for people that are underrepresented, that do not get representation hardly anywhere? How important do you think it would be if they would be able to pick up your game and feel that they are represented in it? That will increase their enjoyment of it tremendously without reducing the enjoyment for anyone else who plays that game. Because I know for a fact that every time that I play a game and choose to, because sometimes I decide I want to play a female character. Sometimes I choose a character that is of color. It does not in any way reduce my enjoyment of that game. But it does increase the enjoyment for people who feel a lack of representation whenever they can feel represented in games. This is not about taking away anything. This is not about reducing something or taking away something that people feel protective of. It's about increasing, about widening our hobby, about bringing more people in, about making it more diverse. And like Mick and Starla were talking about, it's about bringing in more rich experiences, just the same way that we have in music, in food, in clothing, in entertainment. That's what we want. And if people cannot feel invited when they sit down and play a game, you bet they will not feel invited to then design a game or to draw the art for a game. And suddenly we are missing out on a whole big group of people who do not feel that their views are valued because they don't feel represented, they don't feel welcome, they don't feel included. And by alienating people who would one day be designers, artists, whatever it is, publishers, we are hurting ourselves by removing the potential for more variety, for more greatness, for more games, because we're trying to protect something that is not even in jeopardy. Makes no sense. So, diversity in artwork. Again, whatever that might mean, there might not always be room for 100% equal representation, or to say, okay, well, we're going to have an exactly diverse cast of characters in a game, because it might only be a few of them. There might only be room for so much, so depending on what it is. But when possible, include a diversity in gender, in race, in age, in whatever it is. Make the cast of characters diverse in the artwork, not just the player characters, but in the background and so forth. Use people, and I also want to mention, don't put the minorities in the background. Bring them to the forefront as well. Make sure that you have artwork that at the very least feels like it's representative of society in some way. And that means that you should not hesitate to also, within that game, overrepresent people. There's nothing wrong with having a game that has an all-female cast, or having a cast of gender-neutral characters, having a cast of only people of color, because that they're underrepresented in general. This is not going to tip there's nothing There's nothing wrong with overrepresentation of groups of people that are underrepresented. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as claiming overrepresentation. It's about allowing everyone to feel that like they can identify themselves with in some way with the characters in the game. So that was the third thing. Now we're getting into other things. These first three that I've talked about, having a code of conduct for yourself, for your company, for the people that you associate with and everything. To update your rulebooks to be more neutral so that they talk directly to the individual rather than a group of people that are specific, right? But it's something that makes it more inclusive. And 3, make sure that you have variety and representation and so forth in the artwork in your game. Those 3 things, there are 0 drawbacks. There's nothing. There's no reason why anyone would be able to come and say, well, here's the negative to this, because there is none. There's no argument against this that will stand. So now we're going to talk about other things that are not any less important, but that will be pushed back against, unfortunately. And when you're making a game, first of all, look for people that may not be within your comfort zone to do the artwork, to do the design, to work on marketing or development. If you're hiring out, it's one thing if you have in-house people, but if you're hiring out things, artwork, for example, don't be afraid to contract this out to people who you may not have worked with in the past. Don't be afraid to find people who represent any kind of minority. Pick one. Pick something. Pick a variety of people to do the artwork and so forth. Some of the games, for example, I'm going to use one of our upcoming games as an example. So Tabanusi is set in the ancient city of Ur, which is in modern day Iraq. We set out to get a female artist from Iraq to do the cover for the game. That's what we wanted. Now this is not an easy, for us, it was not an easy task at the beginning because we didn't know who to ask, who to reach out to, but we reached out to people who might know who to reach out to, if that makes sense. That means that we looked at universities that have Middle Eastern, Arabic studies, whatever it might be, specifically with the focus on that region. We talked to them saying, hey, this is what we're trying to do. We talked to people at embassies. They have cultural departments at their embassies. We talked to them to ask, where do we need to go? Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to, don't just say, well, I don't know who to talk to. Because then you would learn nothing. You would never get anywhere if you had that mindset. So you can't just say, well, I don't know who to talk to. I don't know. Okay, well, neither did we. We didn't know who to talk to, but we asked people who did know. And we found people who did know who to talk to. We found people who did know how to put us in contact with someone. Now, unfortunately and regrettably, based on her own, it was her decision. We started working on this, and she eventually said, you know what, I don't think that I can do this. And part of that was there was a bit of a a disconnect in understanding what we needed. To a certain extent, there was a bit of a language barrier. Her English was great, but there was, I should say, a cultural barrier of asking for cover art for a board game and trying to explain the purpose of that and so forth. So unfortunately, because she requested that we look for someone else, which was really too bad, because this was something that we want to do. But try to reach out, try to find people. If you're doing a game about some place, try to find artists from that region. It doesn't matter then if they are male or female or whatever, but try to find someone from that region. If you make a game about a prominent woman, for example, try to have a female artist draw it. Try to reach out, try to be more inclusive. Now the reason why I'm saying that there's going to be pushback for this is, first of all, because it takes time, which means that it costs money. It also requires effort. It requires thinking and doing things in new ways. It requires spending your time seeking out people who might you might not be talking to on a regular basis. It means that you need to make an effort. Further, also means that now you're getting a little bit outside your comfort zone. Maybe you have artists that you've worked with for a long time. You feel comfortable working with them. You work well together. They produce things. You know what to expect. They understand. You don't want to. You don't want to do you don't want to go through the process of teaching someone your business practices or trying to get the communication going. I understand that. But try at least a couple of times. It will get easier. It's not, I know that it's not, it requires time investment, and I know that especially in these trying times, that means that it costs money. It takes more time. You need to dedicate more time for the artwork and stuff and such. But that also means that you have a chance to refresh your internal processes. Means that you get the side benefit of getting to review your internal process. How well prepared are you for things that need to take more time? How well prepared are you to pivot and change in certain areas? How well can you define your needs to a new person that you work with? So that there are certainly side benefits to this, aside from the fact that you'd get a person from a region or so to discuss their or to do the artwork, for example, right? Sorry, I need to do something real quick while I remember. Yes, I was drawing a blank. So anyway, so that's one thing that you definitely need to, that's something to work towards right now. Next will be same process, but for designers or people that do marketing and people, whatever it is that you, wherever you can reach out and include more people. There's never going to be a drawback to this. This will help your company to grow and to be more inclusive, and it will ultimately grow your experience as well. It takes time and it takes effort, but it's very rewarding. It's definitely worth it. Then we also have we have other areas, right, of your business, of how you do marketing or whatever. And again, this depends a little bit on you as a publisher. Maybe you already have in-house people that do the marketing or whatever. But if you don't, then again, find people of any minority, any, and invite them to do the work, invite them to add their personal touch to things. There's no benefit of being overly protective of something, because what are you trying to protect? There's no threat here to how you do your business. If you feel that there's a threat, then you're doing something wrong. There's also so those areas that will differ a bit from one publisher to the other. But again, include more people, whether it be artists, designers, marketing, or whatever. Now, wherever you are not then involving other people, then talk to the people who are doing that. Talk to the people who are your artists. Talk to the people that are the designers. Talk to the people who do your marketing. And make sure that they are then inclusive, even if they are not belonging to any minority themselves. Make sure that they are aware of and that they are inclusive in the artwork that they draw, in how rule books are written, or in how whatever it is. And like Mick and Starla were talking about as well, advertise to communities of minorities. Reach out to other people. Reach out. Invite more people to come and play your games. Because by inviting more people into the hobby will grow. We will have a more diverse group of people. We will have more thoughts and ideas, and our hobby will be enriched for it. The last thing that I want to talk about, and we'll talk about these things again in other streams and so forth, but the last thing I want to discuss is cultural representation in games. Now, as you know, we have published several games, and we will continue to publish games that involve other cultures. One thing that we have not been good about in the past is crediting in the rulebook the people that we have consulted with. Even though we have consulted with people, we have not. That has been part of basically the process of in art and in research and whatever, and in getting approval for certain things where we are dealing with something that relates to another culture. We've always reached out to other people and saying, well, is this okay? Is this a good representation, and so forth? But we haven't always credited them in our rule books. Now, going forward, that's one of the things that we will not forget about doing. So, for example, in the Tabanusi rulebook, you will see the credits for people that we worked with specifically as cultural consultants. You have the same thing in Zapotec. There's the same thing in Founders of Teotihuacan. Same thing in some games that are coming out in 2022, and so forth. So, but what I wanted to get to is work with cultural consultants. Now, again, this requires time. It requires effort. It will cost money, not just in time, but you should be willing to pay for it, just like you're willing to pay for an artist to draw beautiful art. You should be willing to pay cultural consultants to make sure that your game is representing whatever the theme is, that it represents that theme well, particularly when it comes to other cultures. You should work with cultural consultants. You should listen to them. You should involve them at an early stage so that changes can be made if necessary. You should talk to them about the game mechanisms, about the artwork. You should involve them the whole way before you send something to print. Now, this process is, it's not always an easy process, because it will be different depending on the culture that you deal with, and will require different levels of effort. And again, finding the people can sometimes be challenging, but again, talk to people who might know who to talk to. Reach out to cultural departments at embassies, at universities. Talk to them about this. Find people. Someone will know someone who can help out. Make sure that you offer to pay them up front, because you want their time and their expertise, so you should be willing to pay for it. And then listen to them and involve them in this. There's no drawback to any of these things, aside from the additional costs that might be involved. But in the end, if you're not willing to spend the extra time and cost, then pick a different theme. If you're not willing to invest in good art, then make a game that does not require good art. Make an abstract game then. Make something that, right? Don't settle for mediocrity when it comes to diversity and inclusion. Don't settle for a status quo. Don't be okay with just doing business as usual. Don't be okay with being part of the problem. Do something, make an effort, and where needed, which will be at the beginning everywhere, ask others for help. Reach out and ask for the help. Be willing to pay for it. Be willing to recognize that you need the help and that improvements can be made. Then make those improvements. This will make our hobby so much better. It will make the games better. It will make this hobby more inviting, more diverse, more inclusive, and we can celebrate the differences while we enjoy the things that brought us together, which is gaming. That is what I have to say about that. We will have these conversations in the future. We will keep talking about this. This is a slow-moving thing. This needs attention. This needs repeat things, and we need to be blunt about it. We also need to, despite how tirelessly people work on this, we don't want things to get to the point where they feel like they need to give up. We want them to continue to fight for this, because it's worth fighting for. And where we can, we want to lend our voice to this. This is as much our fight as well. This is not something that is theirs, right? This involves all of us. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring about this topic. It means a lot.